Okay, so welcome everyone. I am the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Business Competition. Tonight is our Rhode Island Business Competition Kickoff 2021. As Abbie said, it is virtual, but we're very excited about that you can join us for this very informative evening. I think you'll learn a lot from it. Before we get started, I just want to mention that we are in the process of revamping our website. We have a new logo. It's going to be much more informative, very easy to navigate. So keep watching your inbox because in the next few weeks we will be launching that. Our moderator for this evening is Anthony Mangiarelli. He is one of our co-chairs for the Rhode Island Business Competition, as well as he is a partner at KLR. He's going to be asking the panelists. We have 3 panelists tonight. These are former winners and finalists. And he's going to be asking them a variety of different questions. We hope that you'll all participate because the more interactive, I think it's better for everyone. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat during the course of the program. And then at the end, we'll also take questions. So please, I will pass the baton over to Anthony.
Thank you, Beth. We are excited that the Rhode Island Business Competition 2021, believe it or not, has launched, even despite the times that we are all living in. Our organization is the longest running community supported competition here in the Northeast. Keep in mind, we are totally supported by our sponsors, which include private companies, service organizations, public agencies, colleges and universities, banks, investors, and most importantly, former competitors. This ongoing support enables the competition to function year to year, which allows entrepreneurs to build a business framework to transform their ideas into reality. We have had much success. Since we formed the organization back in 2000, so believe it or not, it's 20 years, we have had over 50 previous competitors that are still today making a huge impact on economic development here in Rhode Island. They are growing and expanding their businesses. They are hiring employees. They are buying from suppliers here, and they are just working tirelessly to make sure that the Rhode Island entrepreneurial community moves forward. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge one of our partners here in Venture Cafe and thank them. They're producing tonight's event. And although we would all prefer to be live in person in their amazing space, we hope everyone recognizes the hard work and effort that's gone into making tonight's event really special and great. I ask everybody for their patience and know that this new normal is a little different, but we'll get through it. And while we're thanking people, I'd also like to mention that the Bryant University social media team is spreading the word about the competition, and we have them online as well. One of the benefits to doing this session virtual is that it is going to be recorded. And that's pretty exciting because I know I heard from a lot of people today that were excited to catch this later on because we have such an amazing panel tonight. And I'm going to briefly introduce the panelists and ask each one of them to take 30 seconds to a minute to explain who they are, what their companies do, and how they sell their product. But just for some housekeeping before we get to that, the way the session is going to work is we encourage questions throughout tonight, but the way to do that is to type your questions into the chat. So I'm going to go through a few questions that we've got pre-recorded with the panelists to give some answers and expand on some of their topics, but we also want to hear from the audience. And we know that sometimes you'll forget your questions if you wait till the end to ask them, so please type in your question in the chat box. Beth will be monitoring it, and if we have enough time at the end, we'll get to it. So without additional ado, here comes our 3 panelists. I'd like to first introduce Rajiv Kumar, who's the President and Chief Medical Officer at Virgin Pulse. And I can't believe that it's, seems like it was just yesterday that you were on the stage winning the competition.
Yeah, Anthony, that was 13 years ago, 13 and a half years ago, actually. So I'm excited to continue to, support the Rhode Island Business Competition, and thanks for having me. Just brief introduction. I am part of a company called Virgin Pulse. We are an employee health and well-being software company. So we deliver a platform that employers use to help their employees stay healthy, get healthy, manage chronic conditions, and try to lower healthcare costs and improve outcomes and productivity for employees. The precursor company to Virgin Pulse, which I founded, was called ShapeUp. It was born in the library at Brown University by myself and my co-founder, Brad Weinberg, and back in 2007. And that's when we participated in what was then the Rhode Island Business Plan competition. And we were fortunate enough to win the student track. And we went on to build ShapeUp. And then 4 years ago, ShapeUp was acquired by Virgin Pulse. And we are now here in Providence growing and, as Anthony said, hiring folks and, investing in the local community.
Great, thank you. We really appreciate everything you're doing and helping the competition all these years later. If I remember correctly, while the name of this organization was the Rhode Island Business Plan Competition, your business had an even different name when you came through. I think it was Providence Health Solutions, if I remember correctly. So
that's right. We went through a lot of evolutions of our name, but it was Providence Health Solutions back then. You have a good memory.
Yeah, I'm still a little sharp here. So thank you for that. And it is important to note that we have changed the name of our competition over the years as well to focus more on growing businesses and helping businesses grow, as opposed to focusing just on the actual business plan itself, because we're not grading the business plan for punctuation and do you have all the necessary steps in there. We really want to see, are you passionate? Do you have the skills and the team to build a business and grow it here locally in Rhode Island? So that was why we changed our name as well. And it'll be interesting to hear later on about some of the other iterations that Rajiv and his team went through to win the competition. I'd also like to welcome at this time now Abbie Kohler, who was a winner just last year in our competition. So welcome, Abbie. Please take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about your company and what you're doing and how you found us.
Yeah, happy to. Hi, I'm Abbie Kohler, and my company is called ResusciTech. We developed a CPR feedback solution that is on your phone. So you can hold your phone as you perform chest compressions and get feedback on the rate and depth of your chest compressions in order to perform better CPR and improve outcomes. We're currently using this as part of a CPR training solution. So people can walk through a series of videos in an app, a few quizzes, use the CPR feedback on a pillow or mattress, and then get fully CPR certified. And once we pursue the proper FDA clearance, we hope to release this for use in real emergencies on real people to improve outcomes. My co-founder and I started the company at Brown University, and we participated in B-Lab and were involved in the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship. And we found out about the Rhode Island Business Competition through them and kind of applied on a whim, not expecting much. And then we're thrilled with the outcome to win the MedTech track just this year in 2020.
Great, thank you. So we had a MedTech track winner last year, and we also had an entrepreneurial track winner last year. So at this time, I'd like to introduce John Rafferty, who's the founder and CEO at Retail Marketpoint, to tell us a little bit about himself as well as his company. So welcome, John.
Thanks, Anthony. Good to be here. So Retail Marketpoint is a prop tech or property technology company that specializes in retail location intelligence for commercial real estate. Over the last 6 months, we've all seen the huge impact that this economic shutdown has had on the retail industry. And it's affected not only retailers and restaurateurs, but all other commercial real estate stakeholders as well. So we provide a solution, something called Brand Score, which is it's a universal objective real-time measure that'll instantly evaluate any location in the US for any retail brand or concept. It's kind of like a FICO score or credit score for retail real estate location quality. So we're able to show commercial real estate owners, brokers, and landlords how to identify the best tenants for their properties and their vacancies. We provide tools for lenders and investors to evaluate the risk of retail portfolios and locations, and obviously being able to provide retailers and restaurateurs moving forward how to pinpoint what the best locations are for them. So we started up about 2 years ago, and we did the competition this year, the 2020 competition. We're kind of in early days. I would say we're probably probably just in the top of the second inning as far as moving our business along. But we've been able to make a lot of progress both before, during, and after the business competition, including signing on Moody's Analytics as a partner. So we're the exclusive retail analytics partner on Moody's Commercial Real Estate Information Services Network, which is really a game changer for us. Kind of moving forward as far as credibility and visibility and opportunity. So happy to be here tonight and look forward to the program.
Great, thank you, John. You know, March of 2020 seems like it was so long ago, but it was only 6 short months ago. What's interesting though, and why I'm so happy that Rajiv's here tonight is because, you know, when you look at the recessionary track we're on in the economy, things were a little different back in that 2007, 2008 period, but we were also going through a economic downturn period, some people may recall, where we had a pretty large recession. And being involved with the organization for as long as I have been, I remember that we saw a lot of uptick in young entrepreneurs back then, because there was a lot of individuals that, you know, the economy wasn't so great, so they struck it out on their own. And I'm sure we're going to see that trend again over the next couple of years. So this is pretty interesting, because we're going to find out from Rajiv where he was back then and where he is now, and we hope all our entrepreneurs, our newer entrepreneurs, can be where Rajiv is in 13 years. But let's kick it off with a question to you, Rajiv. What motivated you to apply to the competition?
Yeah, you know, Anthony, it was really simple. We needed the money. You know, we were, you know, two pretty broke medical students that had an idea and wanted to build a platform and launch it into the world. And, you know, we didn't have any startup capital. So we, you know, looked for all kinds of opportunities and we found this one. I think, you know, if I'm honest, I think it was also sort of a forcing function for us. You know, we were looking for a way to put some structure behind what we were doing and to give ourselves some deadlines and to get some sort of honest feedback from third parties. And so it was a way for us to sort of get our idea out from the, you know, the library and out into the real world, get some feedback, spend some time honing our pitch and our business plan, getting feedback on it. Practicing presenting, you know, in front of an audience, in front of investors. And so I think it played a couple of roles for us. You know, it definitely accelerated the launch of our business, as well as provided some very important early stage capital.
Great, thanks. Same question to Abbie. You know, what motivated you to apply to a business plan competition? I mean, it's a big step, so.
Yeah, the money and the in-kind services were definitely a huge part of the motivation. We were, I suppose, likely in a similar financial position as to what Rajiv described. We did not have a lot of capital to do the things that we wanted to do to move the business forward. And also the in-kind legal services and others were really critical for us. So having access to that was important. And then also, I think the credibility of being involved in being a finalist in and, you know, winning the MedTech track was a big motivator for us. Because, you know, we had some amount of recognition through NEMIC and then also through Brown, which both organizations helped us tremendously. But then also having sort of a stamp of approval or verification from an outside institution was definitely a factor that motivated us.
Well, we appreciate the kind words that we are a credible institution. I guess, I would throw the same question to John. I think it'd be interesting to hear how you came across us as well.
Well, I think my motivation for actually finally getting around to applying was probably coronavirus. It was March 30th was the application deadline last year. And I was somewhat familiar with the competition. I had seen it advertised in the Providence Business News. I didn't know that much about it up until that point. We had won the Get Started Rhode Island competition last fall, the Cox Business ran. And we had a little bit of downtime right around the mid to end of March. And I thought it would be a good time to, like Rajiv said, work on our pitch, kind of hone what we're doing. We hadn't really sat down to write an old school business plan, which this really forced us to do. So that was, I thought that was a really valuable experience to do. It was funny, one of the things I think said, you really should have your business plan in a pretty buttoned up before you actually apply to this program, because you're not going to have enough time to, prepare a full business plan before the, I think it was April 14th deadline. So I totally ignored that. We filled out the application and said, well, we'll worry about that if we find out, which we did about a week later, which gave us about 8 days to finalize our business plan. So, but it was a good experience and a good exercise to go through to put that actual physical document together.
Great. And, it's interesting you mentioned the Cox Get Started, because Cox is another one of our great sponsors, and we know that their next event is coming up, Cox Get Started 2021, in a few short days. So I'll let Beth talk about that later on and mention that. I would also welcome Sandy Tremblay from Stormtree, who I saw jumped on. And Sandy, just so everyone knows, Stormtree is a former finalist from several years ago, who is one of those 50 Rhode Island businesses still doing really well, helping out our economy, and also a sponsor of the competition. So welcome, Sandy, and thank you to you and Paul for being a sponsor and being so supportive. I want to stay on something John talked about, and John talked about the business plan and actually writing the business plan. And as I mentioned earlier, we made a strategic decision a few years ago to drop plan from our title, and that was done because we didn't want people focusing just on the business plan. It wasn't you were going to be judged based on how well you wrote a business plan or punctuation. It was how much thought did you put into your business? How serious about your business were you? What was your team like? And so I want to reach out to Abigail, because younger company, and I saw you shaking your head yes, I applied for this, and then I had to write a business plan. So tell us about the whole application process. How long did it take? Did you consult anybody? And how scared were you when you realized you had to actually write a business plan?
So this applying to the business plan competition actually caught us right in the middle of a pivot, because when we applied for the initial March 30th deadline, we were applying strictly with a medical device. And then within that next 2 weeks, we started building out our training platform. So we had a rudimentary business plan before that. It definitely wasn't the full 20 to 30 page business plan to apply with. So we would have had to edit it anyway. But we ended up completely scrapping it and rewriting it in that 2-week interim. And really predominantly in that 8-day period, like John mentioned, which was an experience, certainly. But the application questions for the March 30th deadline were all things we had thought about quite a lot. I don't remember exactly how much time we spent on it, but certainly a couple hours, but not too much more. The business plan was quite an undertaking. That was many, many more hours to prep for. And the pitches afterwards for the rest of the competition were also an undertaking to prep for, because again, as I mentioned, we just pivoted and hadn't pitched this training idea yet. But it was all a great learning experience. And we really figured out how to present this idea. And thankfully it worked out.
And we hope it continues to work out for you. Rajiv, you mentioned that you and Brad were students at the time in your medical degree, and I still remember this session in the competition when you came back, you and Brad came back the year after you won to talk about winning, and Brad did a presentation. It was a white word on a black slide, and that's all it was one word on a slide, and he kept clicking the slides and it was one word. But he talked about the two of you being in the library, I remember, and it just sounded so genuine. So it was a different world back then. Tell us how you got together and wrote a business plan, and two college students in the middle of a medical degree. You guys were busy getting a medical degree and you're writing a business plan.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. I think that was Brad's sort of effort to channel Steve Jobs, back in the day with, black screen and just a couple words per slide. We were busy medical students, and we happened to have similar study patterns. So we'd end up in the library at the same time, studying, usually at the last minute for our exams. And, we were just both kind of easily distracted and always kind of looking for new ideas. And, we both sort of had entrepreneurship in our DNA, from very young age. We were both kind of starting our own proverbial lemonade stands, and we both had a variety of different kind of small businesses, throughout our childhood and high school and so forth. So it was kind of natural in our blood. And I had stumbled upon a really kind of fascinating idea. I created a nonprofit organization called Shape Up Rhode Island, and it was designed to bring people in the community together to support each other, to exercise and eat healthy and lose weight. That kind of model, we used sort of a social gamified model where people would form teams and those teams would compete. And it just took off in the first year. And what Brad and I realized was there was an opportunity to build a software platform to sort of replicate that and then to scale it around the country and eventually around the world. And our big aha moment was that when employers started to call and ask if we could run the program for them. And we never learned about the employer-sponsored healthcare system in medical schools. We had no idea that employers were self-insured and really investing in employee health and well-being in order to control healthcare costs. So we saw great business opportunity, and we wanted to do anything else besides study for our microbiology exam. So we sat around and we wrote this business plan. We did 37 iterations of it, and it was a 35-page business plan. And it was a pretty robust thing. We went all in on it. We got lots of feedback along the way. We did revisions, and it's funny. We went back 7-8 years later and revisited the projections that we had made and the plans that we had put into it, and they were remarkably accurate. And we didn't kind of refer back to it over the years, but I think there is something to be said about kind of planning things at the foundational stage and setting goals and envisioning where you might go. And I think that sort of creates a little bit of destiny. And even if you don't look back at that document, it I think provides a little bit of a trajectory for you and some milestones along the way. And we were kind of fascinated to see how accurate that business plan ended up being.
Thanks. John, you wrote the business plan in 8 days. Looking at it now, 6 months later, what would you have done differently in the process? And have you looked back at your business plan, and how true is it 6 months later?
I probably would have given myself more than 8 days if I was going to do it again. But sometimes that's just the way it works out. So I actually go back to it. I think it's why these things are so valuable, whether it's putting together a pitch, whether it's a 60-second pitch or a 3-minute pitch, or writing a business plan. Little snippets of what's in our plan or the pitches that we gave as part of the presentations, I think they all become part of the conversations we have with people. So one of the things that the business plan made us do in detail was really to get into financial projections. So it's pretty easy to, throw up a PowerPoint slide that has a graph that has a hockey stick with this huge revenue goal that you're going to have at the other end. But when you actually have to sit down and detail out your SaaS model, what type of growth you're going to have, how many subscribers you're going to have, what your churn rate is, that makes a huge difference. It's a lot more difficult, but the thought and everything that went in behind that has been valuable, right up till today. I mean, we still use, it's only 6 months ago, but we're still using a lot of the same financial projections that we put together 6 months ago. Things haven't changed drastically. We haven't had to pivot dramatically, with the economic and circumstances that we're in now. We're pretty focused on the same targets that we were then. So I think the discipline and whether it was 8 days or 8 weeks to put this business plan together, I think the discipline, requiring that, I think is a really valuable tool. As I was doing it, I kept complaining about having to actually write a business plan rather than put together a slide deck or something else. I thought, who reads and writes business plans anymore? But I think having gone through that whole process, I look back and I think it was a pretty valuable experience.
Now, John, how long had you been working on this business idea before you wrote the business plan? Because this wasn't something brand new.
No. So this was beyond an idea. So we started the business up about 2 years ago, late 2018. I'd actually acquired some IP and some assets from a company that I have another company called Devonshire, which is an information services company, and we produce and license data to media companies and retail analytic companies and financial service companies. And this was a company that we had supplied information and data to that had created some of this. So we rebranded and rebuilt and relaunched in May of 2019 of what we call Retail Marketpoint. So up until that point, we are revenue positive. We were operating at break even, as we continue to do. We've been self-funded and bootstrapped, but we had a lot of the ideas, so it wasn't just in the idea phase. We were actually had a product in the marketplace. We had customers, and we have customers now. So we were a little farther along the line. So really, it was kind of putting on paper what we were already doing. But with the discipline of, saying now we got to look ahead a little more and say, where are we going to be in 24 months or 36 months or 5 years, and where do we want to be, and what do we have to do in order to scale what we've already built.
And I think that's great, because that's the point I wanted to get across to the audience, is that even though you wrote your business plan in a shorter period of time than most, you had already been living this for several years. So you were putting down on paper what was probably already in your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was a good exercise to go through. And like Abbie was talking about with filling out the application, was interesting about it because there was a certain amount of, I don't know if it was words or characters you could use. And it was like, you only had 140 characters to describe your entire business. So, that required a lot of discipline as well. It's like, all right, I really got to refine this because I can't go any longer. I can't write anymore. I really have to say this pretty succinctly.
Thank you. Abbie, do you remember the 140 words that you wrote for your application?
I don't remember them precisely, but I do remember that being a struggle, trying to nail down exactly which ones articulated it the best. My co-founder likes to slash words, and I like to add them. So there was a really good push and pull between us as I was adding what I wanted to tell people, and he was scrapping it down to what was really the most refined description we could give. But I certainly remember it being a tight word count.
So knowing what you know now, so many months later, is there anything you would have done differently?
I probably would have given myself a little more time to write the actual business plan, as John mentioned, although again, we were in the middle of a pivot, so time maybe couldn't have been impacted that much on our end. But no, I don't think besides that, I don't think there's much I would have done differently, at least with regards to the application. Looking back on our business plan, which I found myself doing quite frequently, I am pleased with what we wrote down and like still use it for guidance. And to some extent, we've maintained it as a living document. I find myself going back to it and editing our financial projections to be more in line with what we're experiencing now. And, you know, I find myself going back and reading what we wrote as our mission and vision and values and thinking of them as guiding words for where I want us to go as we make decisions. So,
And what's
I wouldn't change much.
yeah, but what's interesting too is, you know, so much more than the business plan goes into winning the competition. There's various presentations, and this was a tough year because, you know, the presentations had to be done online, and you weren't able to really be in the same room with the judges. And, you know, talk about the difficulty in that, because I think when you're in the room with somebody and you can see them, or you can kind of see what they're interested in, you can kind of probably gravitate your presentation more towards that, whereas you didn't have that ability this year. It was somewhat impersonal, I must say, because we were all just getting used to this environment of Zoom.
Yeah, pitching via Zoom is very, very different. I've had to learn things like trying to look into the camera and not down at other people's screens, and just a whole host of other things that I didn't think about before when pitching to a room of people who were in person. So there were definitely some challenges, and I agree with you. I think it was a little more impersonal than pitching to a room with people in it, because you know, you're alone in a room with a computer. But it was an interesting challenge to overcome, and I don't think it's a bad thing to learn. I think it's actually a very good skill. So I think I'm better for it.
We do as well. We appreciate it. So, Rajiv, you've got a little bit more runway to talk about looking back. What would you have done different, but not just in the competition, but is there anything over the years you would have done different with the business or the business plan or growing the business? Anything that sticks out that you said, hey, you know, I really should have done that differently with you know, looking back now in hindsight?
Well, I think a couple of things. So one is, you know, what would we have done differently in the competition? Obviously, we won, so you know, so it worked out. But you know, I've raised a lot of capital in the last 13 years, and I've also deployed a lot of capital as an investor. And in fact, just today, I launched a new venture fund called 401 Ventures to invest in early stage companies founded by Brown students or Brown alumni. So I've thought a lot about sort of what goes into a good pitch, and you know, how do you get people excited about your business idea? And you know, when I think about all the questions that I've ever been asked about anything I've ever pitched or that I've ever asked an entrepreneur, you can sort of boil them down to really three topics. And pretty much any question an investor or somebody evaluating your business will ask you kind of fall into those three topics. One is growth dynamics. So how fast is this company growing? How fast can it grow? What is the total addressable market? And do you have a good, you know, go-to-market strategy to go out and tackle that addressable market? The second is unit economics. How does the business scale? Are you selling $1 for 90 cents, or is this something that can actually be profitable? And do you understand the unit economics, you know, at the early stages of your business? And then I think the third category is really competition. You know, what is the competitive moat? Is there IP, secret sauce, first mover advantage, so forth? And I think so. If I think back, I would have organized our sort of application and our pitch to really kind of focus on answering those three big questions. And I really think that's the game when you're pitching a business. If you can get investors or whoever's looking at your business, you know, to be excited about and convinced on those three areas that you guys know what you're doing, that's really what drives success. So that's how I would have thought about the pitch and the application. In terms of what we would have done differently, you know, a lot. You know, we made a lot of mistakes. We had no idea what we were doing. We hired our first 20 employees off of Craigslist, believe it or not. And actually a few of them are still around, 10 years, more than 10 years later, 14 years later. But, we had, no idea how to hire people, how to assess talent, how to manage, how to run a business. So we learned a lot, and it was sort of trial by fire. I think one thing, as I sit here during this kind of COVID era, and I think back, one thing I would have done differently is I would have embraced a remote virtual workforce a lot earlier. We often felt constrained in terms of the talent we were able to hire and attract to the business due to geographic constraints. And I think in hindsight, we should have built a distributed workforce so we could have hired talent anywhere in the world, wherever we could find it. And that's sort of the direction we're going in now at Virgin Pulse. About a third of our entire workforce globally, out of 1,500 people, work remotely. And we have big offices growing in different parts of the world. And so we are a very much distributed workforce. And we've been able to make virtual work very effective and very collaborative. And, it's sort of the future for us.
That's really interesting, a comment that you made about, this is your first venture. And I've heard all the time from investors, I really think that this is something special, this entrepreneur. I want to invest in their second venture so they can make all the mistakes on the first one. And then I can be along with them on the second venture, because you probably won't make the same mistakes again. So congratulations to you and the team for all your success. And I like the fact that you're talking about a distributive workforce. I know that we're looking at that even in the accounting world now, whereas years ago, you had to hire people, you had to sit in front of them. Well, the world has changed. So we're looking at hiring people all over the world that can do the job, not they can do the job in this geography. And I think that's, the world keeps changing. Businesses keep changing. Innovation keeps coming. So I want to jump back to John and talk about, what impact did the competition have on your business immediately? Earlier Abbie mentioned credibility, and I think you mentioned, there's been some pivots here and there over the couple, the last couple of years before you started this, or when you started this before you won. So what impact has the competition had on your business over the last, 6 months or immediately thereafter?
I think a lot of it is momentum. As I said, we won the Get Started Rhode Island competition last year, and it kind of dovetailed into, let's do the Rhode Island business competition as well. It's just another opportunity to pitch our business, pitch our idea, kind of craft our message and build out our plan. So it gave us a lot of momentum. We actually got involved in the Mass Challenge Accelerator, which we just are finishing up with now. So we kind of took some of the experiences and lessons we learned in putting together the plan and doing the different presentations for the Rhode Island business competition, and took that into the Mass Challenge Accelerator. And one of the things that I've been kind of an entrepreneur for a long time with different type of businesses, typically lifestyle businesses. And this is really the first one that's really a growth venture of something I put together. So it's something that that really has a tremendous amount of potential that I can see, that has a lot of scale potential that we could do. So it's the first time I've really gone out and say, okay, we got to go out and look for outside financing to really take advantage of what we've been able to build here. So from that, what we got through the last few competitions, and now with the accelerator, that's kind of where we're taking it now. It's like, what can we do to scale this thing, to really get it to market, to build it out as big as we think it can be.
And which winnings were especially helpful in the last 6 months? The cash, the in-kind, what's helped you coming out of the competition?
Well, cash is always good. So I'm not gonna say that was one. I think the co-working space right now hasn't been that as helpful in this remote world we live in. But the in-kind services are good too. Anthony, you're going to be hearing from me, by the way, this week, because I have not yet taken advantage of the ones on your end. But I think legal and accounting, I think Abbie pointed that out too. I think legal and accounting are two of the probably the more valuable in-kind services that the prizes for the competition awarded.
Mangiarelli at conlitwin.com, 401-274-2001. I'm always available. Look forward to hearing from you. I do want to also acknowledge my co-chair, Peggy Farrell from Hinkley Allen. You mentioned legal. Peggy had a little surgery, so she couldn't be with us tonight, and we wish her a speedy recovery and look forward to seeing her on our next virtual event. Abbie, how about yourself? I mean, you talked earlier about credibility. You know, John talked about momentum. Anything else that you got in immediately out of the competition, a boost in the business, as well as what was more helpful, cash, in kind?
I would echo the sentiment of momentum. I think it manifested itself a little bit differently for us, but the momentum on our end and the credibility also helped us make connections and led to a lot of new networking opportunities and meeting new people, which became finding people to participate in the pilot of our product, which has been fantastic. And everything that we won was helpful. As John said, cash is always good, and the in-kind services, especially at such an early stage, are really critical. So, you know, I struggle to choose one as being more helpful than the other. It's all helpful and all motivation for people to apply, I think.
And Rajiv, you've got a longer run rate here. So looking back, do you even remember how much cash you walked away with back then? And you know, it might be tough to recall the immediate, you know, momentum that they talked about coming out of the competition, but talk about other aspects of that happened within your business over the years that gave you that credibility and that momentum that you can recall.
Yeah, I mean, so I do think the competition itself gave us momentum and credibility. I mean, we got covered in the local media. We got exposure to potential investors and also to potential customers as we were marketing pretty heavily in Rhode Island and trying to attract Rhode Island employers, some of which were sponsors of the competition. But some of the business plan judges ended up becoming investors in our business. You know, Garrett Hunter, you know, who's no longer with us, but he was an early mentor of ours and sort of took us under his wing. And he and the Business Development Corporation of Rhode Island, BDCRI, ended up investing in the business. We also got connected to a number of other folks, you know, that were associated with some of the sponsors and some of the judges and other people in the audience. So, so actually, a lot of our investors came from the local Rhode Island community, and you know, we can point to directly to the Rhode Island Business Competition as how we, you know, initially got connected to those folks. I think that, you know, the legal in-kind services were pretty helpful to us as well. You mentioned Peggy Farrell. She was, you know, one of the sponsors back then as well, and we worked closely with her for a number of years. And, you know, having high quality representation at an early stage is expensive. And so, you know, having access to that resource was really helpful for us. And I remember, you know, one specific example, we got a cease and desist letter very early on in our business from one of our competitors that I think they thought our website looked too similar to theirs or something like that. And, you know, we were able to defend ourselves and, you know, and have really strong representation. I think they were surprised by the quality of the representation that we had. And it was all in-kind legal services, you know, from the Rhode Island Business Competition. So it was definitely informative. And, you know, the amount of money, I don't remember, it was, I don't know, $15,000 maybe, and then maybe 20,000 in in-kind services or something like that. But, you know, a small amount of money for an early stage company can be rocket fuel. I mean, we took that money and we opened an office, we hired our first employee, we bought a bunch of desks and phones, we redesigned our platform, and we launched our first marketing campaign, all with that small amount of capital. So it was tremendous for us. It was actually the impetus for us to drop out of medical school and to decide we were going to dedicate our kind of time, full time, to running the business. Once we won the business plan competition, that was sort of the validation and the catalyst for us to go and decide to do this full time. So it was definitely formative, and it paid dividends for many years to come.
We've been in awe of all your success with the company, and we're happy that you dropped out of medical school because we were that catalyst.
I did go back, by the way, and finish my degree, mostly so my mother could sleep at night. But we were able to sort of figure out how to leave medical school, go back, and then we actually went right back into the business after we graduated because we got so passionate about what we were doing.
And that's great. And I think that leads into a great next question for Abbie. I mean, I'm sure you got a lot of friends that are saying you're crazy for starting a business. You could be on somebody else's payroll and not have to worry about paying bills, and and you probably eat a lot of ramen noodle because you're living on a shoestring budget. So what have been some of the challenges as an entrepreneur that you've seen and faced recently?
Yeah, it was odd to change my identity from student entrepreneur to entrepreneur in May after graduating. But you're completely right. I had ramen for lunch today. So operating on a shoestring budget is definitely a little tough, and lacking the security that some of my other graduated friends have is also a challenge. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I really like the position I'm in because I am working on something that I am incredibly passionate about, and every day I work, every hour I work, every minute I work, I know that I'm working towards something that I think is going to improve the world. And I'm working towards something that I am very personally dedicated to. So I think my simple satisfaction in the workday makes all of that worth it, and perhaps beyond the workday as well, because I find that I'm definitely working more than 40-hour weeks, but that's all very exciting and very rewarding to me.
And that's important that you've already found your why, because there's going to be a lot of highs and lows being an entrepreneur, and we wish you a lot of success.
Thank you.
You're welcome. John, how about yourself? What challenges have you faced in starting and growing your business? And why do you feel so passionate about being an entrepreneur?
Well, it's funny. I went to Babson College way back in the 1900s. And I think my class was the first where entrepreneurial studies was offered as a major at Babson College. And I don't know what it was back then. I went in there thinking I wanted to be an accounting major. That's what I went there for. And I left. I pivoted big time, and I left with an entrepreneurial studies degree, and haven't really looked back. And I've never gotten a paycheck that I haven't signed myself in all the years since I graduated from school. In fact, I have on the wall back there is an old BC comic strip. I don't know if anybody remembers the old BC comic strip, but it's the Wiley's Dictionary definition of an entrepreneur, and it's a person who does anything they can think of to keep from getting a job. And that's kind of how I'd approach things over the years, always trying to take a look at opportunities. Maybe there's some benefit or some comfort in knowing where your next paycheck is going to come from. But I've always seen the satisfaction of taking an idea from something you wrote on the back of an envelope or a napkin or stuck in a file folder and have it grow out into a thriving business. And with Retail Marketpoint and what we're doing with that, I can see that on a big scale. It's really reinvigorated me to kind of my going back to my entrepreneurial roots.
So I'm a Bryant guy, and I did become an accountant, but my family had businesses growing up, and I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, if you will. I think, I don't necessarily know if you're born with it. Some people are born with it, but I think you can acquire it. And would you say that you acquired it by getting a degree in entrepreneurial studies, or did you always want to, be that builder of a business?
Yes, I don't know if you're born with it or not, but I think like with an entrepreneurial studies major, I don't think they can, give you that passion or whatever, but it can kind of teach you a lot of the tools that you need to succeed as an entrepreneur. So if you do have that drive, the things I learned at school when we did case studies and wrote actual business plans. I think all those things helped in, providing you the tools to succeed when, if and when you found the right thing to build.
Interesting. So, let's stay on this topic because Rajiv, you were in medical school. You had a path carved out for you in your mind of what you wanted to do. You had, you wanted to go to medical school and you pivoted, and you mentioned that you went back because, to make your mom satisfied, but I think it was more than that. I mean, what drove you as an entrepreneur? What drove you to being an entrepreneur?
Well, I think, in my case, I was always an entrepreneur. It was definitely in my blood and in my DNA. I don't know how my parents, I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. I come from a family of doctors. But somehow it was just sort of always my interest. So, I always wanted to be a doctor. I applied to Brown in the PLME program, which is an 8-year program where you go straight from college into medical school and you get accepted when you're in high school. So I knew, from an early age that I wanted to go into medicine, and my goal was to be a pediatrician. And when I got to medical school, I became fascinated with technology, digital health technology, as it was just emerging. And I also got very passionate about public health and finding a way to reach a lot of people, not just one person at a time. And so that's what sort of led me to, trying to reverse the obesity epidemic and trying to have an impact on, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people versus, seeing one patient at a time in the clinic and using technology to be able to scale an intervention and reach a lot of people. So, when I left medical school, I intended to go back always. 1 year became 2, and then 2 years became 3. And then Brown called up and said, if you guys don't come back now, you can never come back. We're not going to hold your spot for you anymore. And so, as good entrepreneurs, we said, yeah, we can have our cake and eat it too. And so we hired a CEO to run the company while we went back to medical school. And we continued to stay involved. So we would do our rotations in the hospital, and then late at night we'd come to the office and catch up on our work and ruffle feathers and do what good founders do. And we went back because we wanted to sort of we were 2/3 of the way through medical school. We decided it made sense to finish it, but also because we knew that it was going to give us a lot more credibility. We wanted to be digital health entrepreneurs, and having a medical degree gave us a lot of credibility and opened a lot of doors for us. And so we were thrilled to complete medical school. We learned a lot. It was a privilege and a wonderful experience, and it's definitely continued to be beneficial for us to this day.
So I want to stay with something you said there. You continued to run the business while you just went back to medical school. Talk about the difference between being a founder of a business and actually being the CEO of a business. I mean, because when you're going back to medical school, did you have to bring in some help from the outside to kind of professionally run the business while you were doing that? Because that's a tall order to do both.
We did. I mean, we went out and we hired a Harvard Business School graduate, successful serial entrepreneur who also happened to be a Brown alum and wanted to move his family back to Rhode Island. And so he moved for the job, and we hired him as CEO. And we tasked him with actually raising our first institutional round of capital, our Series A. And he also built out a management team and built out infrastructure. We didn't have a formal budgeting process. It was a pretty flat organization where everybody reported up into Brad and myself, and there were no departments and so forth. So he really kind of built up the infrastructure and really professionalized the business. And then years later, when I took over the CEO role again, I benefited from all that infrastructure and all the processes that were put into place and the foundation that was built. And I learned a lot, from watching what he did and how he did it.
That sounds like a really good success story. I mean, I think a lot of people sometimes don't realize that, being the founder and being the CEO of a business sometimes can, you're not ready for it in terms of if you've got other stuff going on in life or it's your first venture. There's some people that have already forgotten more than you'll ever know when it comes to running a business. So
we were never afraid to ask for help, and I think that was definitely one of the keys to our success. Is we always tried to find people who knew more than us and had more experience than us, and just sort of latch onto them and try to get as much from them as we could.
Okay. Now, a question came in about when you were at Brown, did they have the digital health department when you were there, or did that happen after your graduation?
No. I mean, this was like totally a new emerging area. Even I would say even entrepreneurship at Brown was pretty nascent. So we were kind of forging a new path, and we've been excited to see that there now is a digital health kind of group, in the hospital system here, and associated with Brown, and obviously entrepreneurship has flourished with the Nelson Center and so forth. So it's been exciting to see, but back then none of that stuff really existed.
Innovation's moving so fast. I mean, it's amazing to think that, that was not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, and to see everything that has popped up there and the good work they're doing is just simply amazing. But, you mentioned some interesting things about asking for help and talking to advisors, and so let's jump to John. Let's talk about the value of networking with advisors and others. You mentioned you won the Cox Get Started contest. I'm sure a lot of people saw you there. You might have been able to grow your network pretty quickly if it wasn't already pretty expansive. But can you talk about some of the value networking has brought you, the company, and some of the advisors that you've met through networking?
Yeah, so that's I think one of the biggest surprises I've had going through this whole exercise, from Get Started to the Rhode Island Business Competition, even a Mass Challenge, is how willing people are to help you. There's mentors out there. We use the Venture Mentoring Services as part of Rhode Island Hub. In Rhode Island, we've been using them since last year. But there's a lot of people out there that are willing to share their time and expertise to help you along. And I think that's been a big help to us, networking. There's a lot of resources in Rhode Island. Our company has more of a national scope, so we don't have a lot of local clientele, but there's a lot of resources and expertise within the state for mentors, for partners, for investors that can be tapped into, locally.
We've heard that quite a bit. So for years, there was always a negative connotation towards the Rhode Island ecosystem, if you would, because it was small, or it wasn't as great as neighboring Massachusetts. But one thing that we've consistently heard that I think is not necessarily appreciated is just how if you spend 3 to 6 months in the Rhode Island entrepreneurial ecosystem, you will meet everyone you need to meet, and you will be able to very quickly come up with a group of people that not just support you, but are committed to seeing you succeed. And I think other states are more fractured with that, whereas Rhode Island is very, and I see Tony put connectivity, we're a very connected state. And I think that we need to embrace that and make that known. And it's great to hear you talk about that. Abbie, have you experienced the same, I guess, as John, in terms of coming out of the competition? Were you able to expand your network? Have you been able to meet with some advisors? And what's your experience with it, especially as a younger entrepreneur?
We have tons of advisors, some that came out of the competition, some we'd gotten to before, and some that we've met since. And they're all incredible. That was one of the biggest surprises to me becoming an entrepreneur, was that when you reach out to people, they are excited to help you, and often do so quite quickly and with a smile on their faces, which has just been fantastic. I expected, cold emails to be met with no replies. especially when looking for advisors and advice and help. But that has certainly not been the case. And I think in Rhode Island in particular, there are more resources here than there are entrepreneurs to take advantage of them. So we've just found a wealth of help and knowledge that seems to be continuously expanding. Like we've gotten a lot of help from NEMIC, and they're a very new organization who have helped us tremendously and provided us with a lot of fantastic advising. So yeah, there's definitely no shortage of resources and no shortage of advisors and mentors here, which has really been critical for us. And I'd also like to add, one of the best parts is that there's so many advisors, we can find ones who are both like completely agree with what we're doing, which is helpful, but also we can find the naysayers who kind of think what we're doing will never work, which I think is really important to find, because you want to know where people see problems in your business so that you can address those or think past them and think about why they're wrong. But you want people to tell you why you're wrong so that you can address what might be weaknesses in your business or in your idea. And there's so many advisors here that I've definitely been able to find that and access that, which is helpful.
And that's great to hear. And, it's interesting because I know Rajiv is actually probably advising entrepreneurs now and is probably sought out as an advisor. So, talk about going from the person seeking assistance and help and advisors and, growing your network to now being the person that provides guidance.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I feel unqualified to provide guidance since I've done this journey exactly once. And so, I'm always happy to share my experience. I always just caveat it that, it's one person's experience and it's one experience, and it may not be indicative of everyone's, experience. But, I always see it as an opportunity to sort of pay it forward. When we were building Shape Up, we got a ton of help and advice and support. Folks like Charlie Kroll, who created a company out of Brown called Indera. Charlie was always, a couple of years ahead of us in the evolution of his business and the growth of his business. And so we would just kind of meet up for coffee and pick Charlie's brain. And anytime we had a problem, he would always had solved that problem a year or two before us and was able to sort of guide and mentor us. And, so a lot of people helped us and asked for nothing in return. And, I think mentoring and advising other startups is our way of paying that forward and hoping to help the next generation of startups.
And, we love the humbleness and you continuing to pay it forward. And I think you hit on something, and I'm going to paraphrase, I think, but, you said opinions are just different points of view. And, you've got one point of view, one journey that you went through, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to, be somebody else's journey. It could go completely different. I think that's interesting because being an entrepreneur, some of it is luck and timing, but some of it isn't. Some of it is traits and work habits and culture. And what are some of the traits or habits of a successful entrepreneur? Or you're all successful entrepreneurs, so let's start with Abbie, because as you said, you've got friends that have gone the safe route. What's the trait that you have that's much different than your friends?
Whether good or bad, a certain amount of fearlessness and conviction. I think probably conviction number one. I just, again, really think that what we're doing is good for the world and is going to work. And then I suppose the fearlessness to act on that conviction. So those are probably, I would say, the top two traits for me. And then as far as habits go, this is a piece of advice that I got fairly early on while starting my company. And the advice was to treat everything you hear like a data point. What you hear is not the end all be all. It's it's simply one person's opinion, and you can collect a wide variety of data points. And that has become a habit I've gotten into that I think has really helped me see the bigger picture when looking for answers, is to treat absolutely every piece of advice and everything I hear like a data point.
Great. John, how about yourself? What are some of the traits that you've noticed that you have as an entrepreneur that are not necessarily the same as others, those that, you know, don't want to, I'll almost call it, there's got to be some sort of eternal optimism in that you're going to succeed. And, you know, that's what I find that most entrepreneurs have. But what are some of the traits or the work habits that you have that you notice that some of your peers don't, and that separates you?
I think one of the things that's important is to always try to kind of think big when you're working on some ideas. You talked about Rhode Island. It's funny. I think sometimes we have a little inferiority complex being from Rhode Island. I noticed I'll be doing Zoom calls over the last few months, and they say, "Where are you guys located?" And sometimes I find myself saying, "Oh, we're midway between New York and Boston," without actually mentioning where we are. But I think it's important to be able to think big, think beyond the borders of Rhode Island. We have a ton of resources here, like you talked about. But it's like, so, you know, with RMP, we're trying to build an industry standard within commercial real estate. So we say it's our objective, you know, that within 5 years, every retail real estate transaction in the US, every, you know, property sale, lease, loan, or investment is measured by an RMP brand score. We want to make our brand score like the FICO score for commercial real estate. So we want to think big. So, you know, that's a long way out there to make something an industry standard or a data standard, but it kind of drives our short-term decisions and things that we do. And it kind of gets your blood flowing, I think, to think it in a bigger way. I think like Rajiv talked about, it's like, you know, Shape Up Rhode Island is Virgin Pulse. It's, you know, it wasn't, you know, kept in by the borders of Rhode Island. And I'm sure he was thinking big. He talked about how he wanted to bring that out to, you know, how we wanted to bring that out to the masses. And that's the type of thing we think about too. It's like, don't be afraid, you know, don't be afraid to think big just because of the idea you thought of it yourself. Don't think it can't be a big and you know, impacting idea on a lot of different people.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, we have a global business leader with us tonight in Rajiv. You know, that's an interesting way to think about it when you think of your reach. How important is the team? You know, because you know, we talked earlier, and you talked about the workforce being able to be all over the place now. But years ago, I mean, the team had to be relatively in the same room, and you've kind of seen that change. How important was your team to your success early on?
I mean, the team is everything, right? You know, a business or a startup is just a collection of people that are working together toward a goal. And so having the right people around you that are complementary, that have complementary skill sets, that share a common vision, and, you know, that work well together, you know, is critical. And, you know, even at 1,500 employees today, everything is about the people. You know, when people say, what are the hardest parts about running and scaling and managing a business, and what are the most rewarding parts, it always comes down to people. People were always the hardest to manage, and you know, are you know, kind of surprising in many ways. But most of the problems, challenges, issues you have are people related, and, you know, most of the successes you have are also, you know, as a result of the people you work with. So I didn't really realize that early on. I just thought, you know, we could set a vision and set a roadmap, and then everybody would just go and do that. But we realized that we had to be very intentional about filtering people on the way in, hiring people for cultural fit, and being zealous about, you know, making sure that somebody was the right fit, and hiring slowly as opposed to hiring quickly, so that we didn't make mistakes. And we used to put people through, like, you know, personality tests, psychometric profiling, intelligence tests, you know, all these things to be able to really get a picture of somebody and make sure we were hiring the right people. And I think that was really important for us. And then I think we always underestimated the importance of building the right culture and being very intentional about building culture. And that culture attracts the right people. It also retains and motivates and engages people. And so, yeah, I would say that is, you know, people is everything.
just you just don't realize all the intangibles that go into making a successful business when you're starting a journey with a new business. I'm going to ask the question. I'll start with John. It's we've avoided it all night, but COVID, how has it impacted your business or your ability to where you see things going? Has it slowed you down? Has it made you change the way you do things?
It's definitely been different. We didn't have to do a huge pivot. I know Abbie talked about the pivot that they had to do, I think, on a larger scale. I mean, team-wise, we were all socially distanced anyways. We have, our core team of 4 is 2 people in Rhode Island, one's in New Mexico, one's in Belarus. So we didn't have to worry about separating ourselves too much. But from a business standpoint, it impacted us just in one of our target markets is retail and retailers and restaurants. And obviously that wasn't going to be a huge market because they're not looking to expand right now. They may be at a certain point, but the way our tool was built, it was obviously there was more opportunity now. We think this change brings us more opportunity to help all the stakeholders within commercial real estate. So the commercial real estate owners, brokers, and landlords that now, what people were calling the retail apocalypse before is kind of been accelerated with what has happened. Lenders or investors, a lot of people are just looking for answers. They're looking for help, and we've already built the tools that can provide that kind of help. So, it's been both a blessing and a curse, but we see a lot of opportunity in it for us, just because where we're situated. I mean, I'm very glad I don't own a restaurant, but I can help. I can help folks that have a chain of restaurants, or I can help folks that want to situate a restaurant in their shopping center. So it's been interesting. I don't like the term new normal. I just you just want things to get back kind of the way they were. But while we are where we are, I think you just have to take advantage of the opportunities that this kind of the situation we find it in presents you.
Love it. We love hearing, innovate, this opportunity and innovation is going to come out of this. And I don't think it's a new normal. I just think it's going to be a new innovation, and we'll see. It's funny. I met with some clients today that own a lot of commercial real estate, and it's a struggle on that side because they went for a period of time not getting their rents, and it's a tough market to be in, but there's optimism that that there's going to be change and good things ahead. So, Abbie, I know you hit on it earlier about COVID, and you talked about making pivots earlier, but where do you see the business going? Do you have to make another pivot, or did you change your strategy at all because of it?
I don't see another pivot in the works right now, which is quite nice. But I think entrepreneurs are well poised to see opportunities in everything, even things that are bad. So, we, at the beginning of COVID starting to become an issue, we had to cancel our first usability study because it involved a lot of people using the same equipment and being in the same room. And that forced our pivot into the training world. And I think the thing that's really exciting for us is, we're competing against really big names since we're doing CPR training, like the Red Cross, which is, a kind of scary competitor to come up against. But because, their standard way of doing things isn't an option right now, you can't have classrooms in person with people all touching and using the same equipment. People are a lot more eager to find different solutions, new solutions, and are more willing to try out, the new startup from Rhode Island and try their technology, and won't at this moment immediately default to the big expected name. So for us, it's kind of exciting to see that happening and have people willing to give us a chance when the current standard isn't an option.
And Rajiv, clearly, things were probably much different on March 15th this year than they are on September 15th. I mean, what did your business do to address COVID, being in the space you're at, being, having employees all over the world? What was the initial pivots that you had to do?
Yeah, well, we were in a fortunate position to be able to help a lot of people. If you're going to be anything during a global health crisis, when everything's going digital, being a digital health platform is a pretty good thing to be. And so, we found that our clients were relying on us more than ever to disseminate communications to their employees, to engage them, and to help them stay healthy and stay safe. We did launch a new product within 45 days of COVID. It's called the Virgin Pulse Passport, and it's built right into our app. And it's a daily COVID assessment tool that gives people a red, yellow, or green categorization to tell them whether or not they're safe to come to the office. And it triages them. If they're not safe, it helps them understand where they can go for testing, treatment, so forth. And that tool really kind of opened a lot of doors for us with new customers, but also was deployed by a lot of our existing customers that had businesses where they had to bring people back into the office, manufacturing, facilities, for example, health systems, and so forth. So we did things like that, and we also bolstered our coaching operation. We offer live coaching, and people can call in and talk to a coach. And we found that the calls were being driven by anxiety and worry related to COVID-19. That was the #1 issue all year for calls into our coaching center. And so from a mental health perspective, we knew that we needed to provide more services and support, and we stepped up in order to do that. And I think we helped a lot of folks along the way. So anyways, obviously there's a terrible tragedy, but if there was a silver lining for us, it was that we were able to play a role in helping people and supporting them through this really tough time.
Thank you for sharing that. I know I work with a lot of business owners, and a lot of industries have been greatly impacted to the negative. Some have been greatly impacted to the positive, and there's almost somewhat of a guilt that your business is growing, but you are helping people. So it's great to work with business owners on both sides. Keep up the fight to move forward one day at a time. So just want to kind of end things here, but before we go, I want to just hit everybody up with words of wisdom. Anything that's on your mind, a quick, parting thought to aspiring would-be entrepreneurs. I mean, John, what's the one piece of advice you give somebody that's beginning this journey to start a business?
Just get started. If you have an idea, test it out, talk to people. There's a lot of resources available. For companies at the idea stage, there's just tremendous amounts of resources available both in Rhode Island and everywhere now. So, 10, 20, 30 years ago, there weren't, to be able to do research, to be able to test things out, to have access to mentors or partners or advisors was a lot more difficult to have. And now, I think that's just available everywhere. So I would just, if somebody has an idea, I'm always, and I find myself even in these programs, like Rajiv said, about, dispensing information and saying, well, I can only tell people about my journey, but I'm more than happy to help people that ask me questions about, what things should be doing. We had, in the Mass Challenge program, there was some sessions similar to this where they had mentors and they had entrepreneurs starting out, and I think that people looked at me and assumed that I was a mentor rather than a 20-something entrepreneur. So but you can do both. You can do both. You never outgrow the need to get advice from other people, and I think everybody's got something to offer. So anybody that has anything, I would encourage anyone just to get started.
Abbie, how about yourself? Words of wisdom?
I completely agree with the just get started, but I think to add to that, I would say talk to as many people as you possibly can. When you think you've talked to enough people, you need to talk to like 10x that number. I think that was maybe one of our mistakes in the early days, was just not talking to enough people. So even people that you think won't have, aren't in the industry or won't have useful information, talk to as many people as you can and use your network.
Thank you. And Rajiv, words of wisdom, looking back, anything you can share?
Yeah, well, I think to build on what John and Abbie said, there's really no such thing as original idea. No matter what you think of, somebody else somewhere has thought of it, but there is original execution. And so, I think it is important to just get started as quickly as possible, because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to execute on your idea, and you're going to really regret it later. The other thing I would say is that a lot of people sit around thinking about all the ways that something can fail or go wrong. And I think it's really kind of an interesting exercise to sit around and think about all the ways that something could succeed, and all the ways it could go right. And I think that sort of helps you to dream big and to be ambitious. And I think John talked about that as well, the importance of really thinking as big as you possibly can.
Well, thank you, and thank you all. I just want to once again thank our panelists, Rajiv Kumar, President and Chief Medical Officer at Virgin Pulse, a 2007 student track winner of the Rhode Island Business Plan Competition, Abbie Kohler, co-founder and CEO at ResusciTech, our 2020 MedTech Rhode Island Business Competition winner, and John Rafferty, the founder and CEO at Retail Marketpoint, our 2020 Entrepreneurial Track winner. We thank you all for sharing your time and knowledge with us this evening. Also would like to thank the Bryant University social media team for helping us spread the word about the competition, as well as Venture Cafe for doing an amazing job with the virtual event we had this evening. We thank everybody for the time and attention, and I'd like to pass things over to Beth Cotter for some housekeeping.
I just want to talk about our next event because we've never done this before. We have a pitch workshop that's coming on October 15th, starting at 5 p.m. As Rajiv and Abbie and John mentioned, your pitch is extremely important, and I don't think we get enough practice in doing it. It's not just selling to investors and pitching, but it's also important to just pitch your idea, so get advice from people. So we have Peter George who's coming to speak, run that workshop. He is a communication specialist and pitch coach. So we're very excited that we have him. It's going to be on October 15th. We will be opening the doors at 5 o'clock. Of course, this is a virtual event, so we can get the word out to as many people as possible. And of course, this is going to be extremely important because we're going to be having our pitch contest. Last year, we had standing room only. We had over 80 people pitch last year, and that will be on November 19th. All this information can be found on our website at ri-business.com. And we really appreciate you all coming tonight. Again, big thanks to Abbie, Rajiv, and John, and of course, Venture Cafe and Anthony doing, as usual, amazing job as moderator. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening.